How y'all doing? For this book review, I'm going to talk about a book that's over 100 years old. It's about a man in the United States military who finds himself transported to the distant planet Mars, where among the people he finds a beautiful princess who, he falls in love with, and she falls in love with him in return. But she gets into distress and gets captured, and so he has to go through all these death-defying dangers just to go and rescue her. And no, I'm not talking about John Carter of Mars, the famous Barsoom series by Edgar Burroughs. No, actually, I'm talking about something along the lines of Gulliver of Mars. This is from Edwin L. Arnold. Now, you may be thinking, this is probably a direct offshoot right after John Carter got famous and all that, and so you obviously get a lot of knockoffs. Not so. This book was published 7 years before. So, with that, it kind of gives you wonder, okay, what gives? Well, let's talk about the story here. So Gulliver of Mars, originally titled Lieutenant Gulliver Jones, his vacation. And you read a title like that, I can understand why they changed it to Gulliver of Mars. It doesn't, you don't look at that title and say, oh, this guy's going on a fantasy sci-fi adventure or what have you. No, with this is, they changed it to Gulliver of Mars, and it's about a guy named Gulliver Jones. He's a lieutenant in the United States Army. He's bet down on his luck. He was just kind of hoping for a promotion, which apparently he didn't get. He was hoping to use that promotion to raise his status, his income, so he can marry the girl that he falls in love with. And, well, he doesn't know what to do. So as he's walking about, he finds, all he has on him is his uniform, his sword, and a pocket full of tailor bills, And so, but as he's walking home, an incident happens, and apparently this man gets injured with his carpet, and he takes the injured man to the hospital. The man did not make it, so he leaves, but he takes the carpet, and as he goes, takes the carpet home. He sits back. He's trying to wonder what to do. He's thinking about his life, and he doesn't like it. And he's amongst and in his state, he just says, "I just wish I'd just be gone off to Mars, just to get away from it all." The carpet responds by wrapping itself around him and transports him to Mars. He wakes up, and amongst this city, beautiful looking, kind of a bit crumbling and decayed, although it's flower decked, and he travels among the citizens. He quickly learns the language through one of the first people he meets by doing this little mind trick that allows him to learn all their languages. Not all, their language, of course. So now he can communicate, gets that out of the way, and he finds out about these people. These are the Hither people. These people live in peace and harmony in the city. They are not wanting or anything. Food is always available, what have you. But not warlike people at all. But unfortunately, that made them very easy to be conquered. You see, part of the peace that they enjoy comes at a cost of this barbarian army that took over, and they are demanded tribute every once in a while. After learning this, Gulliver is now enjoying himself among the people, and meets across a Princess Hither, who they quickly fall in love. Of course they do. And he even went as far as to rigging the marriage drawing to where he would pick her name amongst all others. So, but as celebratory as it is, it was short-lived, because after the wedding, some of the guards, the emissaries of the villainous ruler, comes by and demands the tribute, and part of the tribute is the most beautiful woman they can find for the main ruler. Of course, it's going to be Princess Hither. Gulliver tries to stop him, but he was kind of a partially inebriated state, and he gets overrun very quickly. When he finally comes, sobers up and recovers, he goes off to try and chase her. Of course, these people are not warlike, so none of them could help him at all, so he's on his own. So he travels through both the water and land and finds himself in a few interesting locations, try to avoid some of the monstrous beasts around, what have you, and eventually finds a ways to rescue her. Pretty simple, straightforward story. Now, it's enjoyable, I'll give it that. Hopefully I don't give up too much away. It's just a basic setup here. Now, some of the pros and cons about this. Pros. Well, I actually like the character Gulliver. And I have us link here to a nice fantasyliterature.com doing reviews of Gulliver of Mars, and compared to say the more famous work of, say, John Carter, the Barsoom series by Edwin L, where John Carter is a very ideal, heroic kind of guy. With because he's an Earthman, he has a and so used our gravity. John Carter could jump higher on Mars because only has 1/4 gravity, and it's not an issue here. I mean, I don't know if it was not known at the time about how strong the gravity is or what, or the author didn't know about it, but Gulliver is just the same, has the same, strengths and abilities it did on Earth. Now, as far as the character goes, Gulliver is a likable guy. He humorous in some respects, but he's one of those that is well-meaning but kind of doesn't think things through, sort of thing. I think, in fact, I'll probably use this one right here. This article really does. Let's see. And finally, there has been, as has been pointed out elsewhere, whereas Carter was a truly heroic figure, poor Jonesy is more of a good-hearted but bumbling sort, and indeed, the reader is usually a few steps ahead of him as far as figuring out what will happen next. That's all of which is not to say Jones is a dunce. No one who quotes such writers as Milton, Christopher Marlowe, and James Grant could ever be termed dumb. He's a guy who tries to do what he can, but doesn't think things through. But he's still likable all the same. Now, let's see. And as far as the setting goes, I think it's all right describing Mars as a little bit exotic world. But I think this is where one of the cons is that it's not described as exotic enough as it's too much descriptions of similarities to our world. In fact, you could almost transport this, in some respects, as to a lost unknown territory of Earth sort of thing, like many of their stories, like Lost World by Arthur Conan Doyle. But not entirely. He does describe many cultures and many of the people, and where you can believe this is an exotic planet. But then, and it's like some of the plant life, he says there's a group of people he meets that can make, uses this huge pumpkin-like plant to make canoes and boats out of, make boats out of them. So there's this one type of plant that can ensnare creatures through its scent. There's that aspect of it. And some of the cities get described as a wonderful exotic, exotic fare, like the Hither people's city, or what have you. But there's even a scene from this. This book right here was published back in the 60s, so this is Frank Frazetta's cover. And this is a scene from the book where you got two monstrous creatures fighting each other. But besides for exceptions like this, a lot of times when the author describes monsters in this book, he uses too many descriptions of our animals. So it's hard to imagine, you see birds flying around, or you see, or one time he's up against, during this one event, he's face to face with what he calls a panther. Too many creatures that are described simply on our own, so it's hard to imagine them as anything as our own creatures. It's just not why you read these type of books. You read them because they're exotic creatures. In the Barsoom series by Edgar Rice Burroughs, many monsters will have descriptions similar to us, but they're different enough to where or they're completely unique entirely. For instance, while the Tharks are a famous example, the barbaric Martian creatures are 15 feet tall, have tusks out of their mouths, they're green, have 4 arms. You have the Banths, which could be described as giant cat-like creatures, but they're also like multi-limbed and all that. Many Barsoom creatures are beyond quadrupeds. And also there's what's another one? The Thoats, which are the huge horse-like steeds, again with about 8 legs. There's also the 4-armed gorilla-like creatures. We know they're not gorillas; they just look like gorillas to us. And there's also many other creatures out there that are definitely alien-looking. That's how I think one of the advantages John Carter has over this. If he did more like that, probably would have been more memorable. But speaking of more memorable, how strange enough, you figured, obviously this precedes John Carter, or this became popular and Edgar Rice Burroughs stole it. Well, no, this was not a huge seller at the time. It wasn't until it came out in the 60s again that more people started noticing as more of a historical note as far as this type of fantasy literature, particularly planetary romances, are concerned. Still an enjoyable read, I'll give it that. One of the things about it, I hope I don't give out too much away. I found that the ending kind of is unsatisfactory because there's parts of it that when it ends is like you went through all this and it almost feels like some parts for nothing. They just kind of tidied it over here and there. It's still a happy ending. I'll give it that for at least Gulliver Jones. And I felt like they kind of patched it up too quickly for the for the other characters, like what happens to the princess and all that. But I can't fault it too much because at least, if anything, at least it's a standalone story. So you don't the author, he wrote a handful of books. This was his last one, and based on the lackluster sales, he stopped after that. Now, but here's the thing: is this did this influence, or was it flat out stolen by Edgar Rice Burroughs? Well, that's a bit of a conundrum. I would probably say yes, and according to the introduction by, what was his name? Richard A. Lupoff. Let's talk about this. Let's see. Okay, Jones meets his Deja Thoris. She is Princess Hero, and his healing mites, the magnificently conceived Hither people. He duplicates Carter's rescues of Deja as recounted in A Princess of Mars, and Carter's voyage down to Is is described in Burroughs' The Gods of Mars. And his return to Earth near the end of Arnold's book parallels Carter's return to the end of Princess. Let's see. As for the publishing dates, Lieutenant Gulliver Jones appears in 1905. Burroughs wrote Princess of Mars in 1911 and was first published the following year in All Stories magazine. How a copy of Gulliver Jones found its way from England to America and Burroughs' possession will probably never be known. The book never had an American edition before now, nor did Edgar Rice Burroughs ever refer to it, as far as available records show. One might still ask, did Burroughs ever read Gulliver Jones? But after reading the Arnold book and the opening trilogy of the Barsoomian series, one would not be inclined to do so. Let's see. So it's things like that. Of course, the article I found here. Let's see. Well, he refers to the same introduction I have. While the character Gulliver Jones does not match John Carter, he also the same guy wrote the introduction to this book also references figures that he probably used in Wonderful Adventures of Fraud the Phoenician, another one of Arnold's books, as the character that he would be John Carter in person. While he probably used this book to reference Mars itself. But hey, what have you. I mean, to me, this is more, it's just kind of a nice little read. I wouldn't try to delve too much into did Burroughs did or did not steal from this. I think it's kind of pointless now. But for those who like the planetary romances like John Carter and other books like, say, Gulliver of Mars by Michael Moorcock, or The Vision and the Planetarius, the Christian series by L. Sprague de Camp, or even Robert Howard wrote a similar story about a guy who went to Venus and had similar adventures. I forget the name off bat, but I'm sure you'll probably tell me. But yeah, the whole idea of going to another exotic world and having all these, sword and buckler, swashbuckling adventures against aliens and what have you, mysterious technologies or fantasies and all that. I mean, you would probably be most people were influenced by the Barsoom series by Edgar Rice Burroughs, which alone expanded to 11 books. But even they would have a beginning, despite the lackluster one. Funny thing, though, I first became aware of this character through a comic book. And that particular one is Alan Moore's League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Volume 2. In this one, in case you don't know what this is, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is about, at least the first two volumes, is where the group of people from various forms of Victorian literature, Captain Nemo from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Mina Murray from Dracula, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, The Invisible Man, Alan Quatermain from King Solomon's Mine. These are all put together as a team to help stop another evil from, again, other forms of literature. And part of the fun of this series is trying to catch all the references that he puts in. He puts in a lot. But in Volume 2, the first issue starts off through a scene that pulls back. It's a sort of exotic work, and it turns out to be a carpet with a man on top flying about. And of course, that carpet and the man on it is, it's Gulliver Jones on his carpet. And as I say, in this issue, there's a lot of Mars references, because here's Gulliver Jones talking with John Carter, getting ready to battle the Martians from War of the Worlds. And after reading this book and reading this issue again, some of it makes a lot more sense. I understand the John Carter references, but I didn't understand, like, I got about 500 of the Hither people camped down the canyon. Now I understand who they are now. I even caught the reference to the Vernal Green City in yes, or what's left of it. Of course, it dates back to the Kane Dynasty, thousands of years before the Hither settled into it. They're referencing Michael Moorcock's Kane of Mars. So it's just fun things like that. But this is how I was first introduced to the character Gulliver Jones. Of course, they don't mention it as he's just known as Lieutenant or I thought when it was talking about Gulliver, I thought, oh, they're probably just adding in Gulliver from Gulliver's Travels, by Jonathan Swift. Not the case. No, this is obviously another Gulliver I didn't know about, and you probably didn't know about it either. So, whether it's stolen from Burroughs or not, if you could find a copy of this, and it's easy to find, Gulliver Mars by Edwin L. Arnold. Hey, give it a go. It's a nice, fun read, flaws and all. And just to add to your collection of old classic sci-fi fantasy with particular planetary romances. I enjoyed it. I hope you all too. I enjoyed the character Gulliver. And in some respects, I'm glad I was, seeing how it ended. And even though it wasn't a good seller, I like the fact it's just kind of a one-off deal. Because there are sometimes I would like to read a series, but it's just got so many books. Right now, because I want to read the Barsoom series again. I only got halfway through. And I've yet to finish it all, but 11 books can be quite daunting, even though they're relatively thin. But Gulliver of Mars, nice, good one-off. I found this cheap for $3 at half-price books, and this is a 60s editions, of course. But you could probably find Kindle editions and probably find audiobooks on YouTube and such. But give it a go. Gulliver of Mars by Edwin L. Arnold. Thank you all for watching. Have a nice day.